Wednesday, November 13th. This is the Smart Growth Committee. And I'm Nicole Shimoni, the chair. Bernie's about to tap, tap, tap on the mallet, but no, it's over there. But anyhow, all right. And I'm here with Bernie Flynn. Lisa Dorsey is not in attendance tonight. And this meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda, announcements. All right, seeing none. Comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. And if you're here at Smart Growth, you have 5 minutes versus public safety, you have 3. No, seeing none. All right, we'll go to reports. Director's report.
I have so much stuff. In case I'm asked, I want to be completely covered. I have everything. Okay. All right, good evening. Beginning with items of interest for 410 South High Street, the second preliminary plan submission. An extension was issued by the applicant till December 31st. The applicant's attorney is present tonight. Most likely will be given another extension due to legal matters with the court case that's going on. So that's on hold, basically. For Harb tonight, we have items to present on the agenda. I wanted to also, well, I guess we'll finish the report first. Okay. Statistics summary for building and housing. Last month, we conducted 61 rental inspections. We issued 45 permits. There were 9 property maintenance cases reported. This should actually be 5. 5 disruptive conduct reports received, 5 citations issued, 6 points assigned, actually, and 2 trash tickets issued. Any questions about?
Now, I think my only follow-up would be, Sean, I know I shared with you kind of a chart or, to look at the process and how things are flowing from, when do we get to start seeing that, that put together? Do you have it?
Yes, it's in the packet. Okay. It's in the packet.
Can it be shown?
So that they're separate items, Jeff, that my reports. One says pivot tables, citation pivot tables. I think that's what you. Yes. That's what so far, Nicole, we have come up with. So regarding the citations themselves, you can see for October, there was 5. Since August, we've had 28 citations. We also have another table that shows court status, average of days start to finish. You can see that there's 60 active cases, 32 have been closed, and the grand total is 48. And then regarding court status, count of status, we have 15 that are active, 9 that have been closed, and 4 meeting, they just haven't been assigned yet on a docket. That's a grand total of 28.
Okay. So if I'm looking at this correctly, 28 citations have occurred since the start of August.
Correct.
Of which 15 are still active in court, 9 have been closed, and 4 haven't gone anywhere yet. Of that 9 that was closed, they are all guilty, or they all said they were guilty or found guilty,
Yep.
or what have you. And then of the 19 that are active or no docket are still open.
Correct.
And so
And
far,
the open, do you have the detail too?
I wasn't able to
Okay.
PDF the detail.
Okay.
Just that chart. That's
Sure.
something that's. Yeah.
The open ones are ones where the court date's been scheduled. It just hasn't happened yet because, as you can see, it takes about 32 days from beginning to end to close a case. And the ones that it takes on average 60 days are these active ones. Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes a case can be closed. I don't understand the reason why. Maybe Sally might like, sometimes a thing turns around quick and we get a guilty plea and it settles in 14 days. That's best case scenario. And then some of them are open for, we've got one that I think was issued in the October cycle and they don't have a court date till January 2025. And I honestly don't know the detail why that's happening. So sometimes it takes a while for these cases to be resolved. So we did an average number there of how long it takes to close these out. We were down in October in terms of the number of citations that were certainly had a big surge in September, and it's largely driven by the disruptive conduct report.
One was for property maintenance and the other 4 were for disruptive
But
conduct.
let us get to you we're tracking this in 2 spreadsheets, and honestly, not many rows are filled yet. So quantitative, collective, aggregate analysis is going to be a little thin, right? Because there's just not, N is 28 right now. So we've accumulated a certain amount of points, and I think there was another pivot table there on the points spreadsheet that had how many points we've assigned. It might be in the neighborhood of 15 to 18 total points.
Oh, yeah. I know for one property, they've received, the same property has received 2 disruptive conduct reports. Therefore, that is 6 points against that property. I don't want to say the property, but yes, one property has 6 points just for disruptive conduct at this time.
Yeah, so what we can do is, I wanted to redact the names of the people in the disruptive conduct report before we published it, because those are active investigations, but the properties, what they've been cited for, that's all public information anyway. And honestly, people with a little bit of wherewithal can look those up too. It's public information. These summary charts will make more sense to you if you see the raw data, and you can look at the raw data because there's just not that much of it yet. Yeah.
And I was having some difficulty exporting the raw data. I was only able to export, for the purposes of this report, these tables, which I did not create. That's why. I mean, so I have to work with the data manager on how to export the raw data, but I can review it with you. Most are disruptive conducts. One is property maintenance.
All right, well, we're getting more and more, and yes, the expectation is not that, we know we've just gotten started, but it's really, the idea is getting ourselves set up with a format that's
Right.
easy to read through and see what the story is along the way, how long things are going
Right.
to take, and, where we're going and where we have opportunity for
Mhm.
improvement, so.
Do you find these helpful? I mean, we can tweak this, as you.
Never seen it.
Yeah, I mean, once I kind of got the through line, I think they're a little back. Like I shared with Sean a different way that I would look at it, to share the story in one table versus 4, but it's at least giving us a little bit of a through line of how things are, that there is some resolution that's starting to happen. So, so that's good. And then, having this and then some highlights like you just talked about, how there's one property that has 2 already, and how many is that?
6 points, yeah.
Are there going to be other properties that are multiple offenders and things like that? So.
We also, in these charts, we can create a chart in the future to reflect that, because the enforcement of illegal student rentals is beginning to ramp up. So in the last week alone, you'll see this for next month's report, we have issued 4 notices of zoning violation. So now, because the student rentals are regulated under zoning, they are notices of zoning violations. They are not called citations. Okay. So we issued 4 notices of zoning violations for 4 separate properties in the borough. I probably have reported to me another 10 to investigate that I've been receiving. So we're working on that as well. So I want you to see that this is a priority. There's another case that council will be made aware of, where they've requested a settlement that we're going to discuss. So that's in addition to these 4. So these 4 are going to court. Well, if they can't prove that they are not a student rental, they will be eventually going to court. So we are making that a priority. I've also started meeting with some of the larger rental property owners in the borough. Yesterday, I met with one gentleman who owns 32 properties, and I'm having one-on-one meetings with them to, go over the code, answer any questions they may have about past processes, future processes, et cetera. So I'm finding that extremely helpful. And I've also already met with the largest rental property owner in the borough as well. And we are working on, my team, a mass mailing to not only the Landlords Association, but to all rental property owners in the borough to remind them of, and also educate them if they're not familiar, of the code in regards to student rentals, what is permitted, what is not permitted, and the process to apply for one. Okay. I also wanted to touch on Davis Oil, which the mayor had a concern last month. We did file the notice of violation. They did not abate the issue. So today a citation was filed against the property owner officially for property maintenance violations for not cutting the grass. So they will be receiving a court notice to appear in court. So I wanted to report on that
But
as
they're
well.
still not cutting the grass.
No, they're not. No. So today,
When is the grass cut? You'd much rather have the grass cut, right?
right. So, what else? That's about it for right now, unless you have any questions.
I have some questions about the front page. Jeff, can you bring up the first page that we looked at? And it's only one question. The rental inspections conducted, there were 61 of them.
Mhm.
Out of those 61, how many did the third party do and how many did the borough do? Do you know?
I would say the third party did about 98% of them.
Okay, so other than the BCO, the other employee, what's his day look like?
His day, it looks like trash enforcement. We try to do that in the morning, and then also property maintenance enforcement. Going out as we receive complaints, whether it's through our online portal or from emails of residents, we receive complaints daily. Dilapidated properties, high grass, hoarding, excess trash. So he goes out, he investigates, he tries to contact the property owner, then we issue a formal notice of violation. He's also been working on the illegal student rentals. There is a part of an investigation that needs to occur to validate a resident saying, I think there's students living in that property and it's not permitted. So he's focusing primarily on that to keep those processes going. He has assisted the third party. Unfortunately, the third party representative needs to take a leave later this month until early January. So our current code enforcement officer will be doing all of those inspections that are currently scheduled. And then also, I'm going to have the BCO help out with property maintenance complaints as his schedule permits, why we, continue to rehire and move forward.
Because
And I do stuff myself.
How's that
I
going?
do stuff myself. I'm investigating. I'm,
surprised that everybody needs a holiday,
Mhm.
but the third party that we're using,
Mhm.
it's a Latin name, and my Latin is over.
Bureau Veritas.
Done. Yeah, with
I
Latin.
think that's correct.
Yeah, since 1968.
Mhm.
Confiteor? Now I'm done.
Mhm.
But anyway, they don't have somebody else they can send us?
No, matter of fact, I talked to the vice president there, and he's recently lost some staff himself. There's a shortage of those professionals in the marketplace today, and they're in top demand. A lot of private sector companies are hiring them to do property maintenance, right, for their own. For private companies, code enforcement as well. It's not just limited to municipalities. So there's a shortage of those type of professionals. in the workplace right now. I have been provided some other third-party names. I'm going to begin calling just to see who I can bring in temporarily.
So just so the people in town understand, because I believe it was 68% of the properties are, is it six rentals? Yes.
67, yeah.
So that leaves about what, 4,000 apartments that we have to inspect, not including the university?
Oh, it's over 50, it's over 5,400.
Okay, so 5,000 apartments.
Mm-hmm.
Has for 2024, the list of people that have requested inspections and have dates, you think we're going to be able to at least take care of that workload for the people that have already scheduled inspection for 2024?
Yes, till the end of the year, yes, because we have limited inspections to 3 days a week. And that's when the third party representative has been working. So they've been confined to 3 days a week, these inspections. So our one code enforcement officer is going to take them over as of November 22nd because that's not fair. They've already scheduled their appointments. And then I'm going to work with him, and the BCO will also assist to address some code enforcement issues during that time. But we are going to adhere to those appointments already scheduled throughout the end of the year.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's difficult, if you don't have the bodies to put out there to do the inspections, but those people that have scheduled, I think it's important that we honor that commitment, and then going into 25,
Absolutely.
build a better flow chart, for moving forward. That's all.
And I am working on that. I know you asked for that. I am working on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything?
I was just going to say, how is the hiring of the other person going, though?
It's starting to pick up. There's been, as of this morning, 50 applicants. I know. So I have a lot of resumes.
You got to find one in there.
I have a lot of resumes to go through. One internal candidate has also just applied. Also, some of my community contacts, some of the rental property owners I've been meeting with said, we work with people every day in this profession. And I have a call today from one of them, one of the larger ones, and he has someone that he's going to recommend to apply. So it's picking up steam. I'm really optimistic. By the end of the year, I'll have the position, Mr. Hess's position, refilled. I'm optimistic for the end of the year, at least have the hiring confirmed for a January start date. That is my goal.
All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to show what we threw up there on the screen is we redacted the names
There it
of
is.
the persons who were cited on these cases. And you can see, it's hard to see, I get it, because unless you've got eagle eyes, but most of these are disruptive conduct reports generated by the police department. There's been 28 citations issued. These include citations issued by building and housing. There's some zoning enforcement actions on that list as well. And that one column that says disposition, it's the second one over from the right next to status. When someone pleads guilty or goes to the hearing and is found guilty, that's when the points get assessed. So you can kind of see we've gotten 9 guilty cases out of the 28. And if we scrolled over one more column to the right, you can see the closure date there is the date that we anticipate those cases to be heard. Now, we have a lot there that were scheduled for November 7, 2024. So our staff needs to go in to those ones and figure out what happened. Look up the docket sheet with the MDJ docket number, find out what happened. 9 times out of 10, they're pleading guilty. And honestly, the judges, I want to say my opinion, but the judges being fair, judges are always fair, right? But the judges, and this is not, they're taking this seriously. Let me say that publicly. They're taking it seriously when you look at the fines that are being levied, and they're putting a lot of these people on payment plans to pay for them because the numbers are high. So we have the support of the court on this one. So I think you're going to see a lot more points land from all of these that were submitted in September. That was when we had that surge. because we had we had all those disruptive conduct reports there in the middle of the chart. So I think for now that might tell a better story in the data, and we'll figure out a better way to tell the story to you.
Yeah, because part of it too is we have our story and similar to how we just want them to mow the lawn. We don't want to keep fining, the land. Similar with, properties which are heavier on the students, we want to be able to tell the story that then can be relayed to the students so that they just aren't disruptive, right? Like our goal isn't necessarily to just, points out and kick out students. Our goal is to make it a better place to live for everyone. So if we can find a way to get to that story and get to a place where then it can be relayed to the students, with our partners at the university and things like that, then it'll hopefully create an impact in that way.
I agree. And that's why I've been, targeting meeting with the landlords. So this one property owner who has 32, he really, takes the time to educate his students and, emphasizes that you're living in a family, neighborhood. You're living in a community. This isn't just all student housing. And, we really need strong landlords who educate, who enforce regulations when they see it, because we don't always see everything. And this one story I was told with one of the properties listed, one of his tenants was turning 21 and she contacted him and said, I'm gonna have a 21st birthday party and my parents are gonna come and, but we'll keep it respectful. And he said, okay. Well, the community now is, I feel they're having more of a no tolerance at this point for loud music. So it was midnight and they went out to, open the champagne outside with the parents and all her friends. And it was noisy. And she got cited for disruptive conduct. One of the neighbors called and the police came. That's one of the ones on it. So, I mean, it is being enforced. And the parents were there. It is being enforced. So, I think the message is getting out into the community. Yes, that this is serious, and this is, people's homes, and you have to respect the neighborhood. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Mayor, yes?
Yes, Sally, I had a question. Out of the 61 inspections, how many of them were for student rentals? Yeah, that'd be great if we had a breakdown because we need it. Thank you.
You ready? You're already up the mic. Old business, motion to approve resolution for final land development plan 250 East Market Street.
Good evening. Nice to see everyone. Brian Nagel on behalf of the applicant. We came out of the Planning Commission with a 6-0 recommendation for approval of the final land development plan for 250 East Market Street. I think we have only one. If the members of the committee have any questions about the plan's the exact same as it was when it was preliminarily approved. It hasn't changed. I don't know. Oh, there you go. So it's the same project, 221 apartment units at the former site of the Rubensteins. I think the only issue we have is the recreation fee in lieu that we have to talk about. I'll just show you. So what we had talked to the Planning Commission about was looking at the two different areas. The Planning Commission was favorable to the one that's at the site, not the one that's more in the middle of the block. So if you agree with the Planning Commission, then we would offer the one that's always been there, which is the one you see on the left-hand side of your page for dedication. The borough can accept it or not accept it. We've already been through that before. You understand how that works. And then the balance of that's about, that basically is about 36% of the area that would be required. So then that would be dedicated. That's always been on the plan to be set up that way as open space. The one change is we were asked to make it more like recreation open space with benches rather than just a fully landscaped area. That's the one change that was made at the request of the Planning Commission and your other consultants. So that change has been made. So if you're not interested in the larger piece, which would meet the total area required, then we would just get a credit for the 36% area. Again, you already know my position is, and my client's position is, that the areas, the courtyards in the building, in accordance with your ordinance, meet your ordinance. We resolved that on a prior application by a partial waiver and partial fee in lieu. So you just have to tell me what's on your mind, and I can work with your solicitor to come up with something that can go into the resolution that's going to go before council next week.
Mr. Solicitor, the small piece directly across from the property,
Yeah.
who's going to be maintaining that?
I mean, I think the best way to do it is to have the property owner maintain it.
Okay.
We technically are required to offer it for dedication to the borough, but the way that we've done this in other projects is the borough says, no, thank you. Please keep it as restricted as open space. We'll give you credit for that towards the fee in lieu, and you maintain it, because I think the property owner is better suited to maintain it than the borough, and I think we're okay with that.
I'm fine with that. I just don't want the other portion of the other piece of property, as far as I'm concerned. It just doesn't fit within the footprint of the existing building, but I can see people wanting to leave the concrete area and walk across the street and, walk their dogs and sit
Yeah.
out there and play Frisbee and stuff like that. It's a little bit more contiguous, but the other one doesn't do anything for me.
I'm on the fence. I have to walk past them
Okay.
again. I have to walk past them. I did walk past them. Definitely that piece that's like part of the bigger land, that would be a hot mess. Like if you had like half of that and then people walked on that other person's property and he'd be like, oh,
This one?
you can't-" Yeah, that
Yeah.
one's like a mess. But the other one I'll walk past again. I'm not completely sold because I don't like the idea of setting a precedent of allowing for a piece of land that's on another place that's not on the property that's being developed to be allowed to be given to or used. So I'm a little on the fence on that one. I'll walk past it again.
That one's
It could be a good dog park. I don't know.
that one's adjacent, and I think the Planning Commission's perspective, for what it's worth, was that as much open area as can be provided in that neighborhood would be beneficial. The bigger piece would be good if it could be joined with the other piece next to it. I don't know if that's feasible or not. We can sort of put that on the back burner for now. If it comes to fruition that they could be combined and you could have a larger kind of park area, that would be cool. And we have time if that comes to fruition, but for now, and then we could always change the resolution or something. But for now, I think the resolution could be including the piece, that piece is adjacent. So if you walk by that, you'll see that it is adjacent. And you'll also see that if we don't have that there, we really have no other grassy area for the residents to use near the building. So I do think that's really an essential piece. And then there's some sewer investigations and things that my client paid for the borough in advance. It's not a lot of money, but he's expecting a credit back for that, for those monies expended. And then I think we would be there. I think the total number is, again, with the caveat that I would be looking for some consideration on the fact that I think they've already met it with just the recreation areas in the building. That being said, we want to work it out and have a good resolution with the borough and move on. But with that being said, I think it comes out to like $208,000 or $210,000 after the small piece is credited. And then we'd be looking for, I think I don't know what the other expenditure was, but
Does that fit your calculation?
I looked over at John.
I did the, no, I'll say this.
John, you want to use the microphone? That way there. Sue Bain, that way Sue Bain can hear you.
I just,
Hi, Sue.
I'll say this with the caveat of you have a lawyer doing math, but, yeah, I worked it out that if there were nothing done and it was just a straight fee in lieu, it's 1474 per unit, it's 221 units. That ends up at 325,000, somewhere around there. It's in my resolution. I forgot I didn't have it printed with me tonight. Yeah, it's the smaller parcel along Franklin Street represents approximately 36% of the 5% that they're supposed to provide. So essentially, and this is just as a sort of a spitball idea for you guys and on council to consider. The idea would be to give them credit for about 35% of the overall fee in lieu. So that, yeah, what they would have to pay would be somewhere around 211,000, I think. So that's kind of where it's at. And I just threw that out there as an idea based on kind of what we did at Mitch's with that property.
Yeah, the grassy knoll there, being maintained by the landlord is very important with, benches and trees and stuff like that. And it does give a respite for the 200 and some apartments right there.
for sure. That's why we were asked to take, it was much more heavily landscaped before. And we were asked to kind of modify that, include the benches to make it more of an accessible, usable area for the residents. And I agree that I think that works a lot better. I think my client agrees with that.
And one of the things that was discussed at the planning commission was the idea that, and I know the mayor spoke about this as well. It's the idea of, and kind of what we were getting at with the second parcel, that neighborhood is sort of undergrassed, so to speak, needs more green space. So the idea was that to the extent you can, any of the fee in lieu would kind of be directed towards like John Green Park, that kind of thing in the neighborhood to keep it, to make improvements there, that kind of thing. So those are some of the discussions.
are we allowed, I was under the impression we weren't allowed to it was.
No, not directly, but the idea is that it goes into the rec fund. The idea is that it's supposed to be used for recreation within a reasonable distance. Now, what's a reasonable distance in a mile square borough? But I think that was kind of the idea, is to the extent possible, if there are projects to be funded.
Yeah, as the master plan comes together with, we're on the cusp of this master plan. And that, basically the money goes into the fund. And then, as whatever that master plan is, it'll be distributed.
It is
For-
supposed to be used towards.
Ma'am,
closest
excuse me,
park.
excuse me, Mayor.
So get it
Excuse me,
right.
Mayor. No, it's not.
Yeah, get it right.
No, it's not, Mayor. The consideration can be used, they could take a consideration to be used to the closest park, but it doesn't have to be used at the closest park. It's based on the recommendation of the Recreation Committee. Am I correct, Mr.?
I think that's correct. I think that what came out of the discussion from the planning commission and what the mayor commented on, and I think kind of there was a general consensus that the best area to try to get improvement to park area or open space is in the vicinity of this project, because that neighborhood generally has fewer spaces, green spaces that are available for the residents there who are there today and who will be there for this project in the future. So that's, I kind of think, what the discussion was.
So to take it a half a step further, in the event the council agrees to use the 17 wide swath right there, what does the developer plan on doing with the other green space that's vacant there?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
But I know that my client would be fine. And I know the planning commission was interested, well, if that larger piece next to it could be incorporated, that would make a perfect green space. So we could always structure it where if that comes to fruition, then my client would just get credit for adding that in. And we can work that out at the time when we're recording the plans or when we pay the fee in lieu or at a later date. So I don't think that my client would modify its willingness to include that if the borough decided that worked better for the borough.
So to our solicitor, what's the possibility of incorporating that larger spot into the property that it actually touches?
So I actually had a conversation with Mr. Khan after the PC meeting at one point, and he discussed the fact that he's approached the owner of that piece of property in the past. Apparently it's owned by an older gentleman in the neighborhood. And he's, I don't know his health concerns or health issues, but Eli, I believe, has had conversations with his daughter, who's kind of managing his affairs. And she has said that he has no intention to sell it to anybody. He's associated, I believe, with the church across the street. And I think that lot has been used as parking lot or for events or other things for the church. And so I think it seems like he cares deeply about keeping it and keeping it available for the church. So at least as long as essentially it was communicated from Mr. Khan or to Mr. Khan that essentially as long as he's alive, I don't think it's going to be passing to anybody, that he's going to have it and hold it for the church's use essentially.
Maybe you got to donate to the church. You got to get a tax break.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, who knows? So it all depends what he might do with it, but that's an open question. And then the other thing I wanted to say earlier, and I forgot, was on the Franklin Street property, we've discussed the idea that if the borough does not accept dedication, which it sounds like for the most part, I don't think anybody's really interested in that, but that there would be a deed, what's the word I'm looking for?
An
That's
open space restriction.
Yeah, a deed restriction on the property that it remain open space for perpetuity. That way it's not, years down the road, property, comes under different ownership and then suddenly that gets developed, that kind of thing. So that would be part of it if it is not dedicated to the borough.
Thank you very much for clarification. I appreciate it.
All right, I have a question though. Just around there in general, I mean, similar to the John O'Green Park, the place where we thought we could have a garden at one point is, basically a Superfund site. I mean, how confident are we in that soil there that it is park worthy? I mean, it's been sitting there and maybe nobody's tested it, but is it okay?
Yeah. Which property were you referring to?
The one on the road.
Right.
This one there.
Right, right.
Just because I know kind of
Right.
in general.
So
that
there
area-
used to be a house there
Yeah.
before it fell down. So it's been vacant for quite a long time. However, and the other property, which is another sliver of ground, that the bigger property there was a junkyard. So that was a junkyard. The church doesn't really use it for things because it was a junkyard for many, many years.
So there might be issues with the soil on
That's-
that one.
However,
Mayor, can I ask a question? You're talking, the one you're saying was a junkyard, is the lighter green all the way
Yeah.
to the right?
yeah.
Not the one that was proposed? Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that was part of the junkyard at some point and then it got sold, but that part and the family you're talking about, they inherited from their relative and it used to be a junkyard when their relative owned it. However, I guess my question was, I was at the Planning Commission last week and I listened to the thought that this sliver of ground could be used in lieu of, and this one also, which isn't even really close to it. It's 3 or 4 houses down. So that should obviously not be considered in lieu of, because I thought the way the ordinance read was this is across the street from the buildings. I thought adjacent meant next to. this is across the street from the buildings that are planned to be put up on a small street, Franklin Street. And I thought the way the ordinance read, correct me, Mr. Long, is that in lieu of fee, it had to be on the property that was being developed. Is that in fact not the case?
So you're right. The language of the ordinance is that it's supposed to be part of the tract. Now, I consider the Franklin Street property a little bit differently than I would the other one, for the fact that from the very beginning, when they proposed this plan, the Franklin Street is one of the 4 parcels that they've made part of this plan from the beginning. So it is technically, I would count that as sort of part of their tract of 4 properties. The other one, yes, I think the mayor is right, is that it is not part of it. It's not contiguous with it. And that
May
would,
have problems with the soil, yeah.
you may have problems with soil. And you open up, one of the considerations for council to consider is you open up the door then to, does this start okay, well, I've got this piece of property over here. I'm developing this over here, but I'll offer this one, blocks away. Now, this is only a couple houses away, but, so that's a consideration for council to think about.
Not only does it open that up, but then they get to come back and say, well, you did this for us before, just like they are doing with Chestnut Street. Oh, you did this for us before, so you need to continue doing this for us. So it's a lose-lose situation. You do it for them one time and they expect that this should continue on ad infinitum. Whereas it's not contiguous to the property, it's across the street. And quite frankly, now that they're turning around and saying, oh, but we want some more credit back, I just find it, they want more and more and want to give less and less. They want us to agree to use this sliver of land across the street in lieu of paying $322,000 into the parks, which could be well used. And quite frankly, it could be well used in John O'Green, which has not had anything other than repairs done to it in years. Because, it's not one of the bigger parks. It's not the Hoops. It's not the Marshall Street. It's not the Everhart. It doesn't have the bigger Friends of Association, because around that neighborhood are hard working people that don't get to have the luxury of spending hours at meetings. They don't really, they use the park. All of them use the heck out of the park. And in fact, John O'Green, 3 daycares use the heck out of the park, that come to the park and use the water park. And I hear there's mention of changing that element. Well, that $322,000 could go a lot further than that sliver of ground could, which you're going to put benches on. Let them, they've building to the inch Rubenstein's because they can, without providing for any green space on the property which they're building on. And now they want an exception to say, oh, this is across the street. It's not on the property, but allow this square feet of ground, and then turn around and say, oh, yes, but we paid for this. We want a credit too. I mean, come on now. How many times are you going to slap the borough in the face? I just think it's a big ask. Both of them are big asks. To say, yes, give them the property. Not give them the property. To say, yes, we bend over and say, yes, you can use a sliver of ground, but then turn around and say, oh, but we also want you to give us credit because we did this and thus for the borough. Well, look at what the borough's going to do for them if they allow them to use this sliver of ground that has no merit other than you're putting a few benches there and they'll be able to dog walk maybe. That's it. You won't be able to do anything. He doesn't even want community gardens going up in it. And I know that because I asked him myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so it's a sliver of ground that if we allow them to have it, then it opens the door, allows them to open the door for other properties to say, oh, well, that sliver of ground across the street of another property, that's what we'll use. And I just find it remarkable that, I mean, really, the gall.
Yeah, I'd like to address those comments. I don't agree with that characterization, Mayor. I mean,
I understand
When-
you
but-
wouldn't.
but let me just point out a couple specific things. First of all, when you're talking about a waiver under the law in Pennsylvania, it's considered on a case-by-case basis. So when you have a variance or a waiver that's at the discretion of, or that's granted under the law, that goes case by case. You can't say I can't come in here on another project and say, you gave me a waiver on this project, you have to give me a waiver on this next project because I got that waiver on this other project. It doesn't work that way. It's a case by case basis. The waiver request is made to council. Council decides on the waiver. If there's another case, it's a totally separate consideration. So that's not a question of precedence. There's no precedent setting activity here, in my opinion. And I suspect your solicitor will agree with me. That's point number one. Point number two, as this project has progressed, Mr. Long is right. This is always included as part of the parcels that were being developed for the project. It's always been proposed as open space. The only change that was made to it was to remove some of the landscaping to make it more user friendly. And everybody who looked at the plan agreed that having some open space across the Franklin Street there on this smaller sliver was necessary and appropriate. So I think that totally makes sense. And I think that's how council should view it. The second point is with respect to the Chestnut Square reference that the mayor made. Well, I didn't reference Chestnut Square this evening, but I have referenced it in the past with respect to the inside recreation areas that are provided, the courtyards. In the borough's ordinance, and we've talked about this before, in the borough's ordinance, it says when you provide a courtyard inside of an apartment building, it counts as public open space. That's what the ordinance says.
Not the current one, but.
No, the current one does say it. What you're thinking of,
I'm back and forth on that one last, but okay, keep going.
the ordinance changed slightly, but the design guidelines that have a picture of what counts as public open space has not changed. It's still the same in the ordinance. So,
That picture, because I know we talked about this. But
so my point, the difference on that point is that what I believe the borough would be doing technically by not following what is done for those other past projects, because I don't think the changes in the ordinance address that issue, is an equal protection problem. Now, I don't think my client has gall. I think my client has done everything it's been asked to do. It's made changes to the plan, including changes that are not required by numerous changes that are not required by your ordinances. My client voluntarily left meetings, granted extensions, paid its consultants to make changes to the plan that were not required by your ordinances, because that's what the planning commission asked for. That's what the consultants asked for, and my client did it. I don't think my client has gall. I think my client has a commitment to do the right things in the project that develops in this borough and elsewhere. So I kind of take offense to that comment, number one. Number two, I believe by not honoring what's in the ordinance, the borough is treating similarly situated property owners differently. And that's a violation of the United States Constitution. I've agreed to let that go in light of the fact that we're trying to work together, and the case law that's come down from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, from the Commonwealth Court in Pennsylvania, says the development process is a collaborative process between the municipality and the developer. We've done our part in this project. My client has done its part in all the other projects it's developed in the borough. So to ask for some reasonable consideration based on the nuances of these projects, as we all know exist, that's all we're doing here. And I think that's what we should be doing. And my client is going to pay a fee in lieu a portion of the fee and lieu that's due. It's a lot of money. My client's project has been delayed by the sewer problem that the borough has. My client and the borough have discussed the sewer problem. We're working collaboratively on that. My client paid money to do tests and studies to figure out the nature of that problem. Those tests and studies were the responsibility of the borough. My client paid for those tests and studies to help figure out what the problem is, to work collaboratively with the borough.
Tested studies, but I do
No.
appreciate it. But
Yeah, a portion of them. Yeah, but nevertheless, in good faith, to try to work with the borough to do what's right in this collaborative process. So I think I think we're on a good path and a fair path and a reasonable path. And I'm just asking that we stay on that path because I don't want to have to raise those larger issues in the context of the project. My client doesn't want to have me raise those issues. My client wants to build a good project. My client wants to have appropriate space next door in accordance with the ordinances. There's some credit that's due for that. And I think that's a reasonable request.
All right. You have more comment?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do want to
Right.
comment. The only thing I was going to say is two things. I think originally when this was agreed on and there was original conditions, what they stated was the $322,000 that they would pay in lieu of fee. And then this sliver of ground became a part of it, which is, again, not contiguous with the property. And so that is a condition or a waiver or whatever other language you want to call it. And I think it opens up a door for anything else in the future with anybody, any builders. It would be nice if this were a bigger property where you could do something more, but other than sit on the bench and walk the dog, maybe that's enough green space, but it just seems to me that that type of money would be best used at a local park that's actually really used and overburdened. The park is really used and overburdened by the neighbors and by the 3 daycares that come there. And that's my concern. That's my concern. And sir, you did reference Chestnut Street earlier this evening, and that's the only reason I brought it up. Because when you have the opportunity, you do reference it. And you did this evening. I didn't make that up. Okay?
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Here's where my head is. All right. Again, definitely that middle ground. It seems dicey. I'm not even sure I would agree to like maybe it could happen because it sounds like there's a lot of potential issues with that piece of land that it would not end up being the park that we want. And most likely it sounds like the person that owns it probably holding on to it and is going to donate it to the church when they die. That would be my guess. The other piece, I got to walk past it again. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I hear what everybody's saying. I want to hear what you're saying. I'll talk to you later. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I want to I walk past it all the time. I did not walk past it tonight. I usually do, but I'll walk past it again and just think about it a little bit more when I do that. I think a dog park would be nice too, because a lot of neighbors and residents have talked about how it would be nice to have a dog park in Westchester. And maybe that would be a nice dog park. I don't know. Just a thought. But that's kind of, I'm on the fence. I'm still on the fence on that one. What I don't quite understand though is the other point that you brought up, that the money back for the testing, or can you give me a little bit of your perspective on this? Because that was another contingency that you brought up too.
That might have been done before I got involved. That's honestly news to me, but it sounds like Sean knows about it.
And I guess that's why I used the word gall, only because the borough didn't have it. And to move the project forward, it was very good of your client to help pay for it. But it also benefited him as well as hopefully the borough. But now to talk about, well, you want that credit back, but the borough didn't have it. And so you're trying to move your project forward and get it off the ground. And now that it's moving forward,
Yeah.
That's an issue that Mr. Long and Mr. Metric need to be talking about with Mr. Klein about whatever happened there, because all I saw was question marks above everybody's head, like, where's Brian going with this? But that's okay. Sometimes he sends me, sometimes he sends me down an alley. I'm not sure where I'm going. But yeah, so here's the only, that's that 17-foot wide strip of land. To me, the only thing that's separate, I'm going to go to Mitch's Gym. The rear of Mitch's Gym, which has been approved, there for the building.
Right. Yes.
For the back of Mitch's Gym.
Yep.
Right? From the back of the building to the alley behind my house and Mr. Whoever his name is.
Burke.
Burke, thank you. Mr.
You're
Burke
welcome.
in His portion. Mr. Burke's house, right? Is about exactly the same width
Correct.
and but slightly shorter because it's 3 blocks on Minor. And the only thing different between this, which was a great asset for the neighborhood, as far as some green stuff there, is the street separating it. You know, the Franklin
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah, I would agree. I still think it's adjacent. I think your solicitor agrees that it's adjacent, but yes, it is not on the other side of the alley,
Right,
which would be the comparison of this one.
right.
Yeah.
But with the Mitch's, as we talk about the other things.
Right.
The Mitch's Gym was given a credit for their, you know, for their fee in lieu based on that strip of land.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's no different than this, other
Not.
than the street is separating it. Am I correct?
That makes a big.
Correct.
difference.
Okay, so, all right, that's do you understand that, what was over there, Mrs. Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing as here. The only thing is there's a street and the residents that are going to live in the
Right.
apartment building, they're going to have to walk across the street
Right,
to use it.
right. That is a big difference because it is, in fact, on Mitch's Gym adjacent too.
Yeah.
Because it's part
Well,
of
It's
this.
contiguous.
I
It's
will
part-
say-
It follows what the rules say. It's contiguous. It's part of the property. You have a well-used street in between where they're building and where that sliver of land is. It's called Franklin Street. It's not an alley. It's a street. And a lot of cars come off that street. And so rather than put it on their property and take some of the ground and put it on their property from the building, you know, where they're building itself and make it grass and take up some of that macadam, they choose to use the sliver of ground that they have across the street. So across the street and adjacent are two different things.
Well, Mayor, here's the pickle that we're in. Our
And
solicitor,
I was, you know what, last meeting, I was with them using this sliver of ground.
yeah,
But then this sliver of ground, I even, you know, I talked to John about it. I said, well, yeah, they could use the sliver of ground, but when they turn around tonight and say that they want to be reimbursed for money that they have put forward in the testing and the piping and the sewer,
yeah, well,
that moves their project forward.
I think we need to get to that conversation. I mean, I think
sooner
that's,
than later,
yeah.
yeah.
the-
But
I
to
think-
the point, as the mayor was saying, that whenever you donate, the fee in lieu always comes off of what the developer dedicates. So if it's whatever percentage, like behind Mitch's Gym, because that's more fresh in everybody's mind,
Yep.
whatever that strip of land was, that was deducted from the fee in lieu, and the developer is going to pay the balance. Just like this one, whatever the fee in lieu is, $325,000.
Correct.
Whatever the 36% is, just like Mitch's Gym. So we're staying the same as we always have. And Mr. Cherry, if I'm saying something wrong, please stand up and salute. But he's going to get a credit based on the open space the ground that he's given up. So that's all the same, correct?
That's all the same. Yep.
So it's no different. It's just the street is separating it. And our solicitor saying that's not a problem because it was always part of the original plan. So that's where I sit.
Actually, initially, I'll say what I said before. Initially, they were new to pay the 320, I thought it was 22, but $325,000 worth of the fee in lieu. That was initially part of the original plan. And now that this sliver of ground has come up, you can't minimize the fact that it is not on the property, Mr. Flynn. It's not on the property. It is across the street from the property. And now, if you have other builders coming up wanting to do the same type of thing, you've opened that door.
Well, let's just play this out for a minute. Let's say we say no. Let's say we take the 325. And so what happens to that land? Does it get sold and another building gets put on it and then that green space is gone? Like what do we think would happen?
There was a house there. There was a house there.
Townhouses on.
That little sliver of green space,
Put a townhouse on. My house is 20
You would
feet
need
wide.
you need a variance to do
Huh?
that. You would need a variance to do that because of
Yeah,
the floodplain.
but my house is
regulations.
20 feet wide. That's 17 feet, so, you can build something on it. But whatever, it's for another day.
yes,
I'm more
right.
interested in the sewer money
Yeah, I want to understand
rebate
those
that
stuff.
Mr.
What's
Klein's sitting there chewing his gum, wondering why Villanova can't beat Columbia.
We can look into that and discuss it with Mr. Long and with Mr. Metric and have that for next week. And maybe in the meantime, you can take a look at the property and consider where you are on. Certainly, our position is it's always been considered as part of the project. It's adjacent. And that is clearly, in the context of this project, that is clearly the right use for that portion of land. Clearly, it's the right use for it.
Okay, so are we leaving this right now that from a recommendation, like one?
But you don't
My
have your
my-
other person.
my request would be that Smart Growth recommend approval of the plan in accordance with the Planning Commission's recommendation, subject to council's final decision on the recreation fee in lieu issue.
Well, I think it's also subject to council's decision on understanding this other sewer fee.
That, I would include that as part of the recreation fee in lieu issue. To me, it's all one issue.
That sound right to you as well, or Sean, or do we want to parse those two things out? I think we want it to be two issues, yeah.
No, that sewer thing,
Yeah,
No,
we're
what-
going to divide that up.
that sewer
Yeah.
thing don't sit with me. No, but
All I'm saying, Mr. Flynn, is we'll get the information on it and council will include that, whatever they want to do with that proposal, they'll include it as part of their decision on the recreation fee in lieu.
Madam Chair, I think my mind's set because I already know what happened to Mitch's gym and this is the exact same picture. It's just a street in the middle.
It's not-
But I think our solicitor, Mr. Long, for next week needs to delve into this thing on whether it's contiguous, whether it's part of the original thing. So council, when we meet next week, to talk about this, we have a definitive answer where the borough stands in that position, whether it does work or it doesn't work. Do you agree with that? Because
Yeah.
you're saying, yes, it's part of the original plan and it should work. And as far as you're concerned, it works, but I want you to make
Yeah.
sure that it fits.
So I think right now, we should just leave it, Bernie, with no, even though everyone's clear on how you feel, we leave it with no recommendation right now with the fact that we need to resolve the two issues at the work session next week. And yes, and I agree. And we should call them two issues, separate them out because one's the fee in lieu and then one's the sewer fee thing that no one understands except for you, Brian. And then we'll talk through it next week.
I agree.
So, okay.
And you're missing a person.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so 2-0, no recommendation. Thank you. Anything more? Anyone
Thank-
else?
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, this one should be easy. Smart Growth Committee minutes, October 9th.
Good.
We're good?
Yep.
We're good. Okay. Motion to direct the solicitor to draft an amendment to Chapter 112 zoning building height. Who's presenting this? Sean? Or Jim? Jim? Yeah. Oh, yeah, guys.
Drew the short straw.
Literally or figuratively?
Okay, Jim Cherry, Planning Commission. Again, this is an existing ordinance. What we're recommending is not so much a change in how we go about the building height, but just clarifying and adding a little more teeth to what we have existing. So we've added some definitions and some language to the ordinance, as well as provided in an appendix or an attachment. I'm not sure if any of that is available. I brought one copy, so. So this is for building height and determining that height. And that attachment, what that's doing is providing an example or an exhibit or how we're establishing that average grade plane. So that we're taking points or we're finding an average elevation for all four sides. I'm just using a rectangle for now. All four sides of the building, and then adding them together, dividing by 4, and that becomes your elevation planes. That's simple. Well, the problem is in what's happened in the past, and that's what we're trying to clean up, is the ordinance asks for us to take the elevation at the grade where it hits the face of the building. So that's the elevation or the vertical datum point. What's happening is heights have been taken off of tops of courtyards, which are actually, so they'll come in, build a 2-story garage, put a building on top, measure from the top of that garage or courtyard and call that grade. That's not grade. It's a structure. It's a built structure. They've done, so we're trying to get rid of artificially enhancing the grades in order to bring that grade up in those heights. So
So-
perceived.
Shorter. Yeah, now I'm pretty interested in it.
So there are, the ordinance was always fairly clear of what it was asking as far as the planning commission was concerned, which was first thing to do. I mean, I don't have that ordinance in front of me. I'd like to be able to read that clean sentence because it's nice and easy. But that's to establish the grade plane. And then from that grade plane up, add what's in our table. So we have within each zoning district a height, whether it's 45, 60, 75, whatever it might be. So if it's 45 feet. So that average grade plane, tying that down first and foremost is what's being asked by that. And it's what's happened is, again, it's building or structure. They've been measuring to tops of structures. So that would include courtyards, retaining walls, planters, plazas. So they've built structures, or applicants have built structures and measured from those tops of those built structures. That's not what the ordinance asks. The ordinance asks for the average grade plane, or we'll just call it, I'm going to call it grade as opposed to dirt or concrete or plazas or anything, where that hits and abuts the perimeter or the outside face of the building. So it says the outside edge. That's where that point's taken, not to the top of.
Mr. Cherry, you won't know what that grade is until you build a building.
No, but it's all designed.
I can understand if you're going to use a curb, existing curb that was there.
Grades
That's
in
great.
the middle of the street? Wasn't it, is it not
So
in the
would-
middle of the street anymore?
Well, there's lots of ways to go about it, and different municipalities have different starting points. There are some places that, as an example, take your grade at your property line or just from one point at a primary street. Or there are other municipalities measure by number of stories as opposed to feet. All right. Feet's a tough one because, again, I couldn't tell you a 45-foot building from a 43-foot building by looking at it, especially on a slope site. So what we're trying to do is just clarify how to establish that grade plane. So sticking with the existing ordinance, because the judge that wrote the his understanding actually wrote right into that his determination that it was a very clear language. It was not ambiguous, and it was clear to be understood. So, and I think if we have that, do we have our building height definition from our zoning ordinance? It might be on the website. We can. Aha, perfect. All right. Okay, so if we can slide just down a little bit here, grade plane. Not sure if that's the existing definition or not. Yeah, the height. See the next sentence down. Yeah, that's the paragraph right there. Perfect. Okay, so it says height of a building, the vertical distance measured from the grade plane to. Okay, so then it's a fairly simple, straightforward sentence. So the vertical distance measured from the grade plane. So what's the grade plane? So if we go back up one sheet, one page, please. Yep. So the grade plane, a reference plane representing the average of finished ground level adjoining the building or structure at exterior walls. See attachment 5, which is that attachment you have in front of you, for method for calculation of grade plane and height of building or structure. Within that, we also added the definition of finished ground, the soil, vegetative, or paved surface of the earth surrounding a building or structure as proposed after development and not including any structures built to elevate the grade plane, such as, but not limited to, planters, plazas, courtyards, retaining or decorative walls. So in the past, what's happened is they've built them, which artificially elevates grade and then takes it from that point on. So Burger King as a site is, it drops, I'm just going to say 12 feet across from Dean Street to Price Street, but it's also elevated. So dirt is piled up and moves up maybe 6 feet off of the sidewalk. So if you're walking on the sidewalk and you said, what's the average grade plane? The existing average grade plane is probably 6 feet higher. But because the building's design is pushed out to that sidewalk, that actually lowers that average grade plane down, brings it back down at 6 feet. So when we're looking at the average, say I'm just gonna make the math easy right now. If one side was 20 feet and the other side was 30 feet, then it would be 25 feet would be the average if it was even. So it can be done by, again, looking at elevation points, which are done with a survey, a topo. And when we're designing the buildings or the engineers, surveyors, whether it's civil, architectural, whatever, they're going to be able to tie down exactly where finished grade is going to be. So it's able to be determined ahead of time. But if you're really that close, we're within inches, we're having a different problem there. So
it's already been adjudicated. So it's a good class sample.
Mhm.
If you took your measurement scale now, and you went to the existing building that the developer gave us every 10 feet, I believe it was, he gave us every 10 feet around the building, right? Would, at that point, using your new methodology,
Mhm.
would that building either meet or be exceeding the, what was it, 45 feet?
It was 45 feet.
Did you run
If you,
the model?
whether it's 10 feet, 20 feet, 1 foot, I mean, it just gets the precision gets just a little bit closer. If you took his every 10 foot, the problem again was, if you look at the west side of that building, he's measuring from an elevated plane. All right. So what we're asking is you don't build a retaining wall and measure from the top grade that you just built. You're measuring at the grade, the average grade plane, which is established at the base of that wall. So it's any building or structure. So if you just took the four corners of that property right now, just as it exists right now, and looked at the average, the center point average of each of the existing elevations, added them up together, that building's compliant. All right. So it's compliant now. It wasn't previously. But they've lowered it to a point where they finally came into compliance. So,
By using your methodology now, it's a lot easier to do the measurement.
sure.
And
Yeah, you could do it.
stops on the nonsense.
Yeah. So when they're presenting a table of 95 points, we just really quickly put those four corners came up with the average, this is the average grade plane, and just kind of from a rule of quick thumb in 5 minutes could understand roughly where it was going to end up. I mean, and again, it should have, when they're 8 feet off of that, then you go, hey, what's going on? So it's the more often you measure, like if you measured every 1 inch along that perimeter, you'd even have a tighter average elevation. But it gets a little bit,
Why did they give grace numbers or feet to, they, from what the meeting, it was the flat part of the roof. And they don't take in consideration the parapet wall, right?
Mhm.
Which to me, that's still part of the building. And then they allow people to put 30 feet of,
well, you have different
on top of the roof. So how does that not?
You have different areas, and again, height and within our definition, flat roof is not literally flat. There is actually a slight slope to a 1/4 inch or foot. Roof appurtenances, chimneys, steeples, parapets, they don't count towards that height on a flat roof. If you have a slope roof, like a single house or something might have a gable roof, it's the midpoint. Okay, so they measure to the midpoint of that slope. So it's not to the ridge. So your ridge could be 8 feet higher than the allowable building height, but it's on a slope roof, it's actually measured to the mean point. To a flat roof, it's measured to the roof, but you're allowed a 20% grace for elevator penthouses, chimneys, rooftop equipment, that kind of stuff.
In Chicago, our president-elect always wanted the tallest building in Chicago, but he couldn't reach it because he couldn't build that high. But now he has the second tallest because the spire on the roof, they replaced the spire. I did this through the architectural tour. So he can now have the second tallest building in Chicago for the spire, so what that means, nothing. But I like the idea that you guys have really put a lot of time into this and made it much more simpler
Yeah.
than before.
Yeah, and I think it's still on all these ordinances comes down to enforcement, and it comes down to a consistent understanding of both intent as well as the building code official, when they're reviewing that initial application, is just consistent with what the ordinance is saying, as well as by the time it comes to the planning commission, that we're then reviewing something that in theory has all the review letters from your professionals. Yep. Sorry, Tom.
Just one thing to add to Jim's comments. Tom West with the Planning Commission. One of the other things that this new amendment does is it requires the applicants to bring us their math and submit it, even though it's gotten simpler.
Yes, sister, I remember that.
Yeah,
I had answers, but the sister would say, now go to the board and let me see how you got that.
So we get a lot of information, and it was remarkable that with all these interpretations of building height and where they're measuring from, we weren't getting that information. And then it would have been easier to require it. So that's another part of this amendment, and actually making it simpler. So it does measure it differently, but it does get out, and Jim highlighted that perfectly, that you don't measure from the top of a structure that you've built. You measure from the ground, and that's where the height of the building's measured from.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm good with this.
Yeah, I'm great with it. And thank you.
Recommendation for approval moving forward.
Thank you for your due diligence in this, Ms. Simone, on Planning Commission.
Well, thank you, Planning Commission, because they really took everything and have been running with it. So thank you guys so much. Now, on next one. I think it's that fee in lieu one. That's another one that's on our docket. But okay, anyhow, 2-0 recommendation. All right, new business, HARB applications. Sally, come on down.
A point of clarification, if I can, for the committee, the last item, I'd just like to, the wording there is to direct the solicitor to draft an amendment to the building height. That's already been done.
Yeah,
Let's, if the committee's okay, why don't we say for the work session to schedule a hearing? We can't do it in December because there's a greater amount of review that has to happen with zoning amendments. We schedule it for January 25.
Okay,
Well,
sure.
we don't meet in January.
Yeah, you do next
do?
year. Yeah.
Well, we have the, that there's no transition meeting because there's there you go.
So we'll call a meeting.
Yes, we will.
Don't go on vacation.
Okay.
No.
So we are recommending that the solicitor move forward with getting a hearing on the schedule for January. Yeah, okay.
Perfect. I'm sorry. These four topics here,
Mhm.
are there, in the packet, are there pictures of these things? Because I couldn't find, because I was interested in the sign, the 2 West Gay Street sign.
That's a good question. I don't have pictures. Dana, is there pictures in the?
Oh,
Oh, let's see. Okay, so you want to,
yeah, that's the only one, everything else is pretty clean cut, but the sign, there's some signs going up that really just don't fit my eye anymore in the borough.
okay, so let's, okay, yeah, Jeff, if we could bring up the sign for it, we'll start with 1313 North High. So the board recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness for this application is submitted with the following clarifications. There's 5. I'm happy to read them all if you'd like. There's a picture of it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can see the proposed.
Talking about the
square-
detached garage.
Square sign versus the round sign.
No, Sally's talking about the detached garage on 13 North New Street. What you're
Yeah,
looking at.
this is 2 West Gay. You're on number 2. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I asked
Oh.
about number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So why don't we?
There's only one file, there's only one clarification for that. If new anchor holes are required to mount the wall signs, the anchors will be drilled into the mortar joints.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we have 4, so let's just go through them all.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring up the 313 North High Street. Let's look at that one too. Any commentary that you have here, Sally?
I just want to say Jeff Bytel does the best hand drawings for an architect.
Right.
Congratulations.
Wait, that's a hand drawing?
There's a good amount of clarification here. Is that the garage dimensions have been revised. It's 24 feet wide by 24 feet deep. The new second floor entrance stair will be relocated to the garage exterior on the east side. See it there. The new site plan was submitted but not available for review at the HARB meeting. It will be included in the final document package. HARB assumes the distance between the house and the new garage is unchanged. Building materials previously approved at the August 29th meeting, as listed below, still apply. The siding shall be synthetic wood with a smooth finish. The architectural trim shall be synthetic wood with smooth finish. No aluminum wrap or vinyl products at fascia and soffit. Brick veneer at the base of the wall shall be 4-inch thick red brick to match the existing house. Windows will be aluminum clad wood windows with SDL muntins, which is, I believe, the exterior and interior face of the glass. Entry doors and garage doors shall be insulated fiberglass. Roof shingle shall be architectural grade asphalt singles.
Okay, they're okay, you're okay, we're okay. All right,
Okay.
28 West Market Street.
Board recommends approval for this application with one following clarification. The new metal stair system and existing metal railings will have a powder coated finish.
Okay. Any
Okay.
questions? All right.
And then 388 Heston Alley.
Oh, I'm sure I've walked it. Oh, yeah. Just
Oh, it's up. Mr. McCoy lives up that way.
So Ms. Quigley clarified that Borough Council will review this project under the Carriage House ordinance, not the standard HARB COA process. They do recommend approval with the following clarifications. They commend the owners for their thoughtful efforts to preserve and transform this significant carriage house. The harbor appreciates the effort to retain the overall building volumes, forms, fenestration, and materials. Comments on the exterior finishes are as follows. The first preference is to retain the existing horizontal wood siding in the public facades, salvage wood siding for reuse on the 2 alley facades at a minimum. Also recommend new wood siding for replacement of the damaged wood. Alternate siding could be boral by duration for non-public facing elevations as proposed. Sloped roof shall be standing seam metal with half-round gutters and round downspouts as proposed by the applicant within the meeting. The proposed Sierra Pacific and Hope windows are appropriate in this context outside of the historic district and in the number and locations identified. It is recommended that the applicant use wood windows in lieu of clad units at the pedestrian level elevations. One window location is right on the alley. New stone cladding may be used to face existing block walls as proposed, or siding or stucco may be used in lieu of stone if desired. And the final submission drawing shall be updated to reflect final material selections.
All right, I'm good. You're good. We're good. All right, we're good on all 4. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to go live here too. Looks
Yeah.
like it'll be nice when I'm done. Yeah.
That's the first ward.
All right. Any other business? I have one thing that I do want to say, Bernie, and I figured it fits here. You know, we've had our resident Lisa Kearns coming to our meetings over the past couple of months to talk about fire safety and our short-term rental policy. And so there were a few additional bullet points that she had called out with regards to the ordinance and how they could fit in. And I've talked to Kristen, and it sounds like they can fit in and we can make them work without lengthening our process as well. So when we have our hearing next week, I do want to also add in there a proposal to add a couple more bullets that Lisa Kearns has recommended for fire safety for the short-term rentals. So.
I'm okay with that, as long as it's our fire department and our fire marshal agrees that it's a good thing. You know, we ask, they're always here, so we just ask, we ask Darrell too, and he'll know. So, but yeah, I'm fine
Yeah.
with that, yeah.
All right, so.
You can't ever shortcut safety.
That's right, that's right, that's
Can't
right.
shortcut
So-
safety.
So that's
Good.
agreed.
So we're adjourned at 7:30.
Well, I will adjourn it as the
Yeah,
chair,
yeah.
so.
We've been partners
And it's
all night.
7:28, 7:28, and the meeting is adjourned.
I don't want to